The strobing lights of Pacha Ibiza painted the scene in fractured, pulsing colors. In the exclusive VIP section, the bass line thrummed through the floor, a relentless heartbeat for the hedonistic paradise that surrounded them. But for one man, the party was irrevocably over. Eddie Burton stood perfectly still as the Spanish Policia Nacional, stone-faced and brutally efficient, closed in. There was no protest, no panicked attempt to flee, just a quiet, almost unnerving acceptance. To the casual observer, he looked like any other clean-cut, baby-faced British tourist, but the name on the international arrest warrant they carried told a vastly different story. The man they were looking for, the architect of a sprawling £20 million drug empire, didn't officially exist, not under that alias, not in this country. He was a ghost who had mastered the art of distance, a quiet commander who moved vast quantities of heroin, cocaine, and ketamine across the continent without ever having to dirty his own hands. It took a multi-agency manhunt spanning several countries, months of painstaking digital forensics, and this final dramatic sting in a super club to bring the whole sophisticated enterprise crashing down. This is the story of how a schoolboy from Liverpool built a logistics firm for narcotics, and the moment it all collapsed in the blinding glow of Ibiza's club lights. Long before the private jets, the Amsterdam hideouts, and the multi-million-pound seizures, there was just a boy on the streets of Liverpool. At 10 years old, with his school uniform perpetually half undone and his trainers 2 sizes too big for his feet, Eddie Burton was already in the game. It started, as it so often does, with small, seemingly insignificant tasks. A short walk across the estate, a crumpled plastic bag passed from one hand to another, a nearly imperceptible nod from someone older and harder. He was the perfect asset for the neighborhood's established dealers. With his small frame and innocent, almost cherubic face, he was human camouflage, a boy who could move through the streets, past patrols and rival gangs, without drawing a second glance. But Burton was more than just a runner. He was a student of the highest order. While others saw a harmless kid earning pocket money, he was quietly absorbing the intricate rhythms of the trade. He watched how deals were brokered in hushed tones in the back of pubs, how territory was held not just with violence but with reputation, and most importantly, how to spot the plain-clothed police officers before they ever spotted you. He wasn't interested in the flash and the bravado that consumed so many of his peers. He didn't crave a reputation built on fear, he craved control built on intelligence. Family members would later describe him as a tearaway, a boy too smart and too angry for his own good, always pushing boundaries. But it wasn't chaos he wanted, it was order, a perfectly structured system he could command from the shadows. By the time he was 16, he had comprehensively outgrown his mentors. He was no longer the courier running errands, he was the one giving the orders, dispatching others with a quiet authority that belied his age. Liverpool had been his brutal, effective classroom. But he had hit a ceiling in his own postcode. The city was too small, the rivalries too intense, and the eyes of law enforcement too close for the scale of his ambition. To build the empire he envisioned, he needed a bigger stage. Amsterdam would provide it. In early 2021, at the age of just 19, Eddie Burton vanished from the UK. There was no dramatic exit, no missing persons report filed by a worried family, just a quiet, one-way flight to the continent. He was no longer running errands, he was building an enterprise. Amsterdam, with its transient population, labyrinthine canals, and central role in Europe's vast logistics network, was the perfect headquarters. He wasn't there to make noise or flash cash. He was there to construct a silent, ruthlessly efficient machine. Burton operated with the discipline of a ghost. He eschewed long-term commitments, living a series of short-term rentals, paying in cash, and never leaving a paper trail. He cycled through burner phones like they were disposable lighters, and used a string of aliases to further obscure his identity. His business was conducted not in clandestine warehouses, but in the quiet, anonymous cafes that dotted the city, where he would meet with suppliers and brokers, always observing, always taking meticulous mental notes. He didn't build his network through violence or intimidation, but through structure and absolute reliability. He became a student of legitimate commerce, studying ferry schedules, the operations of freight companies, and the legal driving hours for HGV drivers. He was designing a system to move product on an industrial scale, coordinating a complex chain of couriers and drivers, each of whom only knew their small, compartmentalized part of the job. No one saw the full picture except him. Back in Liverpool, his name was still whispered on the streets, a bogeyman in the making, but no one could say for sure where he was. That was exactly how he wanted it. He didn't need to be feared, he needed to be invisible. From his new base in the Netherlands, his ambition only grew. Spain, and specifically the Costa del Sol, became a second hub, offering sunshine, luxury villas, and another crucial layer of anonymity between him and the ever-present risk. He was now a young man of 21, hiding in plain sight, pulling the strings of a cross-continental smuggling operation of immense scale. An invisible king, operating from afar, needs a trusted and highly capable regent to manage the home front. While Burton directed his burgeoning empire from the continent, his ex-partner Sian Banks anchored the entire operation in Liverpool. To the outside world, she was a 25-year-old living a life of enviable luxury. Her Instagram feed was a carefully curated fantasy of pool days in Marbella, city breaks in Dubai, designer bags from Gucci and Louis Vuitton, and sun-drenched beaches. But behind the soft filters and aspirational hashtags, she was playing a far more dangerous and critical role. The National Crime Agency, NCA, would later describe her as nothing less than essential to the criminal enterprise. Banks was the firewall, the fixer, and the chief operating officer. She expertly laundered the torrents of cash the operation generated, sourced clean couriers with no criminal records who could travel without raising suspicion, and handled the intricate day-to-day logistics on the UK end. Between June 2022 and October 2023, her passport was a testament to her workload. She flew to the Netherlands and Spain almost every month for short stays, always traveling alone. These were not holidays. Phone evidence later confirmed that on at least 2 of these trips in August 2022, she returned with more than just a tan, personally smuggling significant quantities of cocaine and ketamine in her own luggage. She was smart, audacious, and calculated. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, as global travel ground to a halt, she spotted an opportunity. She began a lucrative side hustle selling expertly doctored travel documents, fake test results, and altered vaccine records to bypass international restrictions. It wasn't just for profit. It was a vital operational tool, another way to ensure that she and other key members of the network could keep moving while the rest of the world stood still. She believed she was safe in the background, just another glamorous young woman with an expensive carry-on and a life to be envied. But every quiet act, every flight, and every transaction leaves a trace. The beginning of the end came on a mundane summer's day at the port of Dover. On the 3rd of July, 2022, Border Force officers conducting routine checks flagged a seemingly ordinary HGV for a secondary inspection. There was no specific intelligence, just a hunch. Hidden inside, packed amongst ordinary-looking boxes and even a discarded little shopping bag, they discovered a smuggler's bounty: 90 kilos of high-purity ketamine and 50 kilos of cocaine. It was a huge seizure, but it was just the first crack in the dam. 6 weeks later, on the 12th of August, it happened again. A second lorry, a different driver. This time, the concealment was far more professional, a sign of a truly sophisticated operation. Officers discovered a specially fabricated, reinforced auxiliary fuel tank expertly welded and sealed. When they cut it open, they found it packed to the brim with another 142 kilos of cocaine and 25 kilos of heroin. Combined, the 2 seizures totaled 307 kilograms of Class A and B drugs, with a staggering street value estimated at £20 million. The drivers, including a 64-year-old Latvian national named Maris Fridvalds, offered few answers and would later be jailed. But the packages themselves had a story to tell. Forensic investigators went to work, and what they found was the eureka moment of the investigation. On the drug wrappings from both shipments, and even on the interior of the adapted fuel tank, they found the fingerprints and DNA of Eddie Burton. And on the ketamine bags from that first crucial seizure, they found another set of prints, those of Cian Banks. The ghost and his queen had made a critical, arrogant mistake. They had physically touched the product, leaving an irrefutable scientific link between themselves and the multi-million-pound shipments. With solid forensic evidence in hand, the NCA launched a full-scale, technologically driven investigation, digging deep into the digital lives of their two main suspects. Burton and Banks had built their empire on the belief that their use of encrypted platforms like Signal and WhatsApp, combined with a constant rotation of burner phones and fake contact names, made them digitally invisible. They were profoundly wrong. In the world of modern policing, encryption is a hurdle, not a fortress. Investigators meticulously pieced together a timeline of their movements and communications that was as damning as it was detailed. Airline records and hotel check-ins perfectly matched Banks's monthly trips to Amsterdam and Spain with the dates immediately preceding the seizures. By gaining access to their devices, investigators unlocked a treasure trove of messages. Though coded with terms like the thing or the run, the conversations corresponded exactly with the intercepted shipments. They coordinated multi-kilo deliveries with the detached professionalism of corporate logistics managers, even using emojis as shorthand: a snowflake for cocaine, a pill for MDMA. In one particularly careless and damning exchange, which took place just 2 days after the first seizure at Dover, Banks messaged Burton, expressing her anxiety that her fingerprints might be on the seized bags. He casually, almost dismissively reassured her, texting back, "You've never been nicked or had ye prints took anyway, so doesn't matter. It was a fatal miscalculation." That single message eviscerated any potential defense she might have had. It proved she was not just a girlfriend along for the ride, but a hands-on accomplice who was physically present when the drugs were being prepared for their final journey. The encrypted chats, the travel records, and the forensic hits provided the NCA with a complete, undeniable blueprint of the entire operation. With the evidence mounting to an insurmountable level, the NCA initiated a multi-agency international manhunt for the fugitive Eddie Burton. By mid-2023, he was one of their most wanted targets. Intelligence, gleaned from a network of international law enforcement partners, suggested he would be in Ibiza, an island that offered him both the pulsing anonymity of the tourist crowds and a familiar, luxurious playground. In August 2023, the hunt came to its cinematic conclusion. Acting on precise intelligence, the Spanish Policía Nacional didn't raid a fortified safe house or a clandestine meeting. They walked directly into the VIP section of Pacha, one of the world's most famous and decadent nightclubs. There, amidst the thumping bass, the flashing lights, and the oblivious revelers, they arrested a stunned Eddie Burton. He was using an alias, but a quick fingerprint match on a mobile device confirmed his true identity. The young man who had built an empire on the principle of distance was finally caught, his world shrinking in an instant to the size of a pair of handcuffs. He was extradited first to Germany to face other charges, before being returned to the UK under the guard of the NCA's elite National Extradition Unit in March 2024. With the king captured, the net closed inexorably around his queen. In December 2023, North Carolina A officers knocked on the door of Cian Banks' home in Liverpool. There was no dramatic raid, just a quiet, methodical arrest backed by an evidence folder thick with flight records, incriminating encrypted chats, and forensic reports that left no room for denial. The logistics queen's reign was officially over. On the 12th of February 2025, Eddie Burton and Cian Banks stood separately in the dock at Canterbury Crown Court. The bravado and confidence they had displayed in their text messages had evaporated, replaced by the grim reality of their situation. There was no shared defense, no united front. The prosecution methodically laid out the overwhelming evidence: 2 massive intercepted shipments, the irrefutable forensic links, and a digital trail that documented their entire conspiracy in their own words. Burton, now 23, pleaded guilty to 4 counts of importing Class A and B drugs. The judge described him not as a reckless thug, but as a methodical and intelligent coordinator of a network with exceptional reach, who had wrongly and arrogantly believed that encryption and geographic distance would shield him from the long arm of the law. Banks, 25, pleaded guilty to 7 offenses, including drug importation and money laundering. The court utterly dismissed any notion that she was a coerced or passive participant, with the judge calling her an indispensable part of the operation. Her defense counsel argued she was seduced by her love for Burton and the love for the lifestyle, but the evidence painted a clear picture of a willing, capable, and crucial facilitator. The sentences handed down reflected the immense scale and sophistication of their crimes. Eddie Burton, the baby-faced boss who commanded a 20 million pounds network from afar, was sentenced to 24 years in prison. Cian Banks, the logistics queen who managed the home front, received a substantial sentence of 17 years. The NCA's branch commander, John Turner, stated plainly, Burton, with Banks's help, attempted to smuggle huge quantities of harmful drugs into the UK, believing he could operate with impunity overseas. In the end, the complex system they had tried so hard to outsmart kept every receipt, and their empire, so carefully built in silence and shadow, finally ended under the harsh, unforgiving lights of a British courtroom.